I never expected my own sister to scream that I ruined her life while my parents silently agreed. That night I walked out, leaving behind the only home I had ever known. But the silence I hoped for didn't last. This morning, my phone lit up with 14 missed calls, their names flashing like ghosts, demanding my return. Something in me shifted, an ache hardened into clarity. They didn't want me back out of love. They needed their scapegoat again. But this time, I wasn't walking back into their cage. This time, I was ready to fight for myself. The candles flickered softly, casting a golden glow across the dining room. My parents had spared no effort decorating the table. Crystal glasses, polished silverware, a cake layered with buttercream roses. Laughter floated through the air, filling the space with warmth. For a moment, it felt like the kind of birthday I used to dream about as a child, the kind where everything was harmonious, where family meant safety. My sister Olivia leaned in to hug me, her perfume sweet, but her grip cold, the smile on her lips tight. To anyone watching, it looked perfect. To me, it was a mask, but only 5 minutes later, the illusion would shatter. I watched my parents dote on Olivia. My mother adjusted the strap of her dress, complimenting her hair with a softness I rarely heard in her tone with me. My father chuckled at one of her stories about a failed audition, reassuring her with a hand on her shoulder. "You'll get it next time. You always do." They smiled at me too, but the smile didn't reach their eyes. It was the difference between light given freely and light borrowed. I blew out the candles, everyone clapping, and for a moment the warmth almost felt real. Olivia leaned closer, her lips brushing my ear, as she whispered, "Claire already has everything. Maybe the rest should finally be mine." Her words slid into me like a knife, hidden beneath the sound of applause. I froze, my smile faltering, but no one seemed to notice. When I looked up, I caught my parents exchanging a glance, silent, complicit. No reprimand, no gentle correction to remind Olivia it was my day. Just silence, a silence that screamed louder than any words could. Trying to steady myself, I poured wine into Olivia's glass, pretending I hadn't heard. But she wasn't done. Raising her glass in mock toast, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "To Claire, the sister who always gets the prize. Leave a little for the rest of us, won't you?" A nervous chuckle rippled across the table. My stomach knotted. My father's eyes flicked toward me, then quickly back to his plate. My mother reached for a serving spoon as if nothing had been said. I wanted to believe someone would defend me, that they would tell Olivia to stop. Instead, my mother smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Olivia is only teasing. Don't take it so seriously, Claire. You always read too much into things." Gaslighting wrapped around me like smoke. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe Olivia was joking. But the look in her eyes, sharp and satisfied, told me otherwise. Her toast wasn't a joke, it was a declaration, a reminder that no matter what I achieved in this house, I would always be the villain in her story. The cake was cut, slices passed around, forks scraping against porcelain. On the surface, it was a celebration, but underneath, tension simmered. Every laugh Olivia delivered was laced with poison, every silence from my parents another cut. I forced myself to smile, to keep the peace, because that was the role I had been given, Claire, the quiet one. Claire, the one who doesn't argue. Claire, the one who absorbs the hurt so the family can remain intact. Inside, I felt something cracking, their laughter blurred, the taste of buttercream turned bitter on my tongue. I thought of all the times I had been told to let things go, to stop being dramatic, to remember family comes first. But whose family was I protecting? Certainly not mine. I excused myself from the table, slipping into the hallway. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window, 36 years old, successful in my own right, yet still reduced to a child in this house. My hands trembled, not from anger, but from the quiet devastation of realizing I might never belong here. Behind me, the laughter continued, Olivia's voice rising above the rest, triumphant. She had won again, not through merit, not through grace, but through manipulation and my parents' willingness to let her. I pressed my palm against the wall, grounding myself. My mind whispered, don't make a scene, don't give them another reason to call you selfish. Yet, deep down, another voice stirred, the faintest ember of defiance. When I returned to the table, Olivia greeted me with that same smug smile, raising her fork as if nothing had happened. My parents glanced at me briefly, their faces neutral, before turning back to her. I slid back into my seat, lifting my glass with a shaky hand. I laughed when they laughed. I nodded when they spoke. I swallowed the bitterness with each bite of cake. To them the night was a success, another family gathering preserved. To me, it was proof that I was the scaffolding holding up their fragile illusion. I wondered, as I looked around that table, how long before the cracks they ignored would become impossible to hide, because the truth was already clawing its way to the surface. And when it broke through, it wouldn't just shatter me, it would shatter us all. The days after my birthday should have passed quietly, but they didn't. Olivia had a way of keeping her presence alive, even when she wasn't in the room. Stories of me, twisted and sharpened, began to circulate within the family. Suddenly, I was the selfish sister, the one who hoarded opportunities, the one who destroyed harmony. At first, I thought it was just whispers, but soon my parents were repeating her words to my face. If it weren't for you, Olivia would have achieved so much more, my mother told me one evening as she cleared the dinner table. Her voice was calm, almost tender, as if she were stating a fact rather than a wound. My father chimed in with his steady baritone. You never notice how much space you take up, Claire. You always make everything about yourself. The words lodged in my chest. I wanted to protest, to remind them of the countless times I had sacrificed my own needs for theirs. But their eyes were already set, their judgment carved deep. It wasn't a debate, it was a verdict. Olivia fed them stories like poison, drip by drip, how I supposedly mocked her failed jobs, how I boasted about my income, how I dismissed her struggles. None of it was true, but truth had little weight in our house compared to her tears. She knew how to cry at the right moment, when their anger was hot enough to mould into blame. One afternoon, while visiting my parents, I noticed a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter. The bold letters of the bank's logo stood out, and though I hadn't intended to pry, the flap was already torn. Numbers glared at me from inside, an overdraft, a looming debt, Olivia's name printed at the top. My stomach twisted. For a moment, relief washed over me. Finally, the evidence of her lies, proof of the burden she had become. Perhaps my parents would see now, perhaps they would finally understand that I wasn't the villain she painted me to be. But when I cautiously mentioned it, hoping for clarity, my mother's face hardened. How dare you go through Olivia's private things? Do you think your money makes you better than her? That debt is only temporary. Unlike you, she's had setbacks. My father's voice carried the final blow. You should stop flaunting your success. It only humiliates her further. A real sister wouldn't show off. My chest tightened. The evidence that should have freed me had become another chain. Their eyes weren't on Olivia's debt. They were on my supposed arrogance. The truth I held was reshaped into another crime against me. That night, as we sat down for dinner, Olivia struck harder. Her fork clattered against her plate, her voice breaking as she screamed, "You ruined my life, Claire. Every time I fail, it's because of you. You take everything from me. You don't even care what it does to us." Her words ripped through the room. I waited for my parents to intervene, to remind her I wasn't the cause of her choices. Instead, I saw my mother lower her eyes, my father slowly nodding as if her accusation was gospel. It felt like the floor dropped beneath me. My throat burned, my palms shook. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How could I defend myself when the jury had already decided? Just as despair tightened its grip, a voice broke through. My Aunt Margaret, who had been sitting quietly at the corner of the table, suddenly stood. "Enough, Olivia. Stop blaming your sister for your mistakes. Claire has done nothing but support this family. I won't stand by while you destroy her with lies." Hope sparked like a flare in the darkness. My chest loosened, my pulse steadying. For the first time in years, someone was defending me, cutting through the suffocating silence. I looked at her, gratitude burning behind my eyes, but Olivia was not defeated. She turned her sobs into weapons, her tears flowing as she clutched our mother's arm. "You don't understand. Claire makes me feel worthless. She takes everything, even your love. Don't let her take you away from me too." My mother's eyes welled, torn between her daughters. My father's face tightened, but his silence leaned toward Olivia. The table shifted. The weight of sympathy, the fragile moment of clarity Margaret had offered, evaporated under the force of Olivia's crying. Margaret hesitated, her voice faltering. "This isn't right." But Olivia collapsed into our mother's arms, trembling, sobbing so loudly it drowned everything else. "Please don't let her replace me. Please don't love her more than me." The tide turned. My parents wrapped themselves around her, soothing her, whispering comfort, their bodies angled away from me. Margaret's voice died, swallowed by the chorus of Olivia's grief. I sat there, a spectator, in my own trial, the flicker of hope extinguished as quickly as it came. My aunt's words had been a lifeline, but it slipped from my grasp, dragged down by the weight of Olivia's manipulation. The night ended as it always did, with Olivia victorious, my parents complicit, and me cast as the scapegoat once more. I went to bed with her scream echoing in my ears, "You ruined my life." But what haunted me most wasn't her rage. It was the quiet nod of my father, the subtle agreement of my mother. They believed her. And if they believed her once, they would believe her again. The meeting was supposed to be about settling minor family matters, who would take care of the old cabin, how to divide a few keepsakes from my grandmother. I walked into my parents' living room that Sunday with a brittle hope, thinking perhaps we could manage civility. But Olivia had other plans. She sat on the couch, posture perfect, face pale as though she were a martyr preparing to deliver her testimony. My parents sat flanking her, their expressions solemn, expectant. I felt like I was walking into a courtroom where the verdict was already written. Olivia's voice broke the silence. Do you all want to know why I've never been able to build a family of my own? Why every man I loved left me? Her eyes burned into mine. Because of her. My chest tightened. What are you talking about? She turned to our parents, her voice trembling with theatrical sorrow. Claire stole Michael from me. She knew I loved him, and she went behind my back. She paraded him around just to humiliate me. The words hit like a fist. Michael. The boy I dated briefly in college, long after Olivia's fleeting crush had ended. There was no betrayal, no overlap, no malice, yet here she was, twisting time into a weapon. My father's face hardened, my mother gasped, and I realized with a hollow thud in my chest, they believed her. Claire, my father said, his voice low and condemning, is this true? Did you betray your own sister like that? It's not true, I stammered, heat rising to my cheeks. Olivia had a crush years before. Michael and I dated after, and it was innocent. He never belonged to her. But Olivia pressed on, tears streaking her cheeks. You see, she doesn't even deny it. She has no shame. She ruins everything and pretends it's nothing. My mother's voice trembled with rage. You're a disgrace. Do you realize what people would think if they knew? You've embarrassed us, Claire. You've always embarrassed us. I felt the air drain from my lungs. Years of trying, of bending myself into shapes to fit their expectations, all erased with a single lie. Then, unexpectedly, Michael himself appeared at the door. My aunt had called him, desperate for clarity. He looked older but steady, his presence like an anchor. That's not true to say. A friend stepping into the room. Inari Nursler never betrayed Olivia. We dated years after Olivia and I stopped talking. It was harmless. She didn't steal me. She didn't ruin anything. For a flicker of a moment, hope sparked. Finally, the truth, spoken aloud. Surely they would hear it now. But my father's face twisted in anger. This is family business. You have no place here. He waved Michael off like a nuisance. My mother added, Of course you'd defend her. She manipulated you too. You're just another pawn in her game. Michael tried again, but his words were drowned by Olivia's sobs. She collapsed against my mother's lap, whispering, Why does she always take everything from me? The sight was grotesque. My sister, cradled like a child, weeping poison into my mother's ear, while the truth stood powerless in the doorway. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I saw the truth clearer than ever. There was no fairness here, no balance to be restored, no love to salvage. My family didn't want the truth. They wanted their scapegoat. They wanted me to bear the weight of Olivia's failures, to carry their shame so they wouldn't have to look in the mirror. The illusion of family, the belief that blood meant safety, shattered like glass. My childhood hope, the belief that if I were just patient enough, good enough, they would love me. It died right there on that couch. I stood, legs trembling. I can't do this anymore. No one stopped me as I picked up my bag. Not a single voice called my name as I walked out the door. Michael tried to follow, but I shook my head. Don't. They'll never hear you. The night swallowed me whole, Days blurred into nights in my small apartment. Sleep evaded me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Olivia's voice echoing in my head. You ruined my life. My parents' silence weighed heavier than her screams. Food lost its taste, the world its colour. I moved through my days like a ghost, carrying an invisible verdict carved into my skin. Sometimes I replayed Michael's words, reminding myself that the truth existed somewhere, even if they refused to see it. But more often the lies drowned me. My reflection in the mirror looked hollow, my eyes sunken, shoulders bowed. Depression wrapped me tight, suffocating but familiar. Then, one morning, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. 14 missed calls. My mother, my father, even Olivia. Their names stacked on the screen like ghosts pounding at the door. My heart raced. What could they possibly want now? Regret, reconciliation, or another trap, another demand for me to play the role they had written for me? The screen glowed in the dim light, each missed call a question I wasn't ready to answer. The morning after the 14 calls, I didn't answer. I silenced the phone and sat in the half-dark of my apartment, curtains drawn against the world. Yet something inside me shifted. The constant ache was still there, but beneath it stirred a restless question. What if it isn't me? What if it never was? That afternoon, wandering the aisles of a bookstore just to escape the silence of my apartment, I pulled a paperback from a shelf without thinking. Its title stopped me cold. Children of Narcissistic Families. I flipped it open, expecting jargon. Instead, I found my life written in black and white. Every page described patterns I knew too well. The golden child versus the scapegoat, the cycle of gaslighting, the love bombing, followed by withdrawal, the unspoken rule that one child must carry the family's sins. I turned the pages faster, my heart pounding. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't crazy. For years I had been told I was too sensitive, selfish, dramatic. But here, in print, was proof that I had been living inside a system built on lies. Tears blurred the words as relief and rage collided in my chest. I am not their scapegoat anymore. I am not broken. They are. For the first time in months, my breath felt full, my spine straightened. Days later, an envelope slid under my apartment door. My Aunt Margaret's handwriting scrawled across the front. Inside was a letter, trembling with regret. She admitted she had stayed silent too long, watching my parents twist the truth. She confessed that years ago, my father had hidden debts in my name, blaming me for irresponsibility, when, in truth, it was his recklessness. My mother had destroyed letters from my college scholarship committee, furious that I had been chosen over Olivia. My hands shook as I read, fury tightening like a fist around my ribs. They had stolen not only my dignity, but also pieces of my future. Yet Margaret's words also carried a lifeline. I am sorry, Claire. You deserved better. You still do. The ember inside me flared into fire. Enough of silence. Enough of carrying the weight of their lies. I began collecting evidence, old emails where my parents scolded me for embarrassing the family without reason. Bank statements that proved I had repaid debts they once insisted were Olivia's burdens. I dug through boxes of paperwork, piecing together the puzzle of manipulation they had orchestrated. Every page I saved felt like reclaiming a fragment of myself. But evidence alone wouldn't save me. I needed strength. I booked an appointment with a therapist, sitting nervously in her office as I spoke the words I had buried for decades. She listened without judgment, her calm presence giving space for my pain. Week by week, I felt myself solidify, no longer dissolving under the weight of their voices. I set new goals, financial and personal. I opened a separate account, began investing in my own future, instead of tethering myself to theirs. For once, I wasn't living reactively, scrambling to prove my worth. I was living with intention. Still, the phone calls continued. Sometimes Olivia left voicemails, her tone syrupy sweet. "Claire, we miss you. Don't be so stubborn." Other times it was my father's sharp demand. "You owe us this conversation." I didn't answer. Their voices could no longer dictate my reality. Then, one evening, as I sorted through another stack of family papers Margaret had secretly given me, I found a manila envelope. My name was handwritten across the front. Inside was a photocopy of an older will, one drafted before years of manipulation had twisted everything. My heart pounded as I scanned the lines. The estate, the house, the land. All of it had been left to me, not Olivia, not shared me. The room tilted. For a moment I couldn't breathe. All these years they had called me selfish, greedy, accused me of taking too much, when in truth it was they who had taken everything from me. I gripped the paper, my pulse racing. This wasn't just evidence, it was the key. The narrative they had spun for decades, that Olivia was the rightful heir, that I was the jealous one, collapsed in an instant. But I also knew what this meant. If they discovered I had this document, their calls would turn into storms, their rage into fire. And yet instead of fear, I felt clarity. The truth wasn't just on my side, it had always been. The question now wasn't whether I could survive them. It was whether I was ready to face them. The letter from Margaret and the will I had uncovered weighed heavy in my hands. Weeks of sleepless nights had forged a decision. I would no longer carry their lies. If they wanted me as their scapegoat, I would show them what truth really looked like. I called my parents and Olivia, telling them I would attend the next family gathering. My voice was steady, almost calm, though inside a storm raged. They agreed too quickly, relief dripping through the line. They thought I was crawling back. They had no idea I was coming to end it. The day arrived, grey skies pressing low. Their house looked the same as it always had, white siding, flower beds trimmed. But I saw it differently now, not as a sanctuary, but as a stage for one final performance. Inside, Olivia was already poised, her eyes glinting with the satisfaction of victory. My parents flanked her like guards. "You finally came to your senses," my mother said softly, though her smile never reached her eyes. I set my bag on the table and laid out the folder of documents. "No, I came to show you what you've hidden, what you've denied for years." They laughed at first. My father scoffed. "What games are you playing now, Claire? More exaggerations? More drama?" But as I spread the papers, the emails, the bank statements, the letter from Margaret, and finally the copy of the old will, the laughter faltered. "This is nonsense," Olivia snapped, but her voice cracked. I looked her in the eye. "You told everyone I ruined you, that I stole what was yours, but it was never yours. It was mine, long before you decided to rewrite history." My father's face darkened. My mother's lips pressed tight. Olivia shook her head violently, her tears already forming. "Don't believe her. She forged this. She's trying to take everything from us." For a moment I thought the pattern would repeat, that their silence, their complicity, would smother the truth again. But then from the corner of the room, my Aunt Margaret stepped forward. Behind her, 2 cousins, who had long remained neutral, followed. She's not lying, Margaret said, her voice firm. I saw the documents myself. I gave them to her. You've all turned your backs on Claire for years, and it ends today. The room shifted. My cousins added their voices, recalling moments when they too had noticed the favouritism, the manipulations. The weight of their words broke the rhythm of Olivia's cries. The satisfaction in my chest was sharp, burning. For the first time, I wasn't standing alone. My father tried to regain control, raising his voice. Enough, this is family business. Outsiders don't get a say. But my aunt met his glare. When you destroy someone's life and lie to everyone, it becomes everyone's business. The atmosphere cracked. Olivia screamed, her hands clawing at the papers. You can't take this from me. I deserve it. I've suffered more than anyone. No, I said quietly, my voice cutting through her hysteria. You've made everyone else suffer because of your own failures, and I won't let you use me anymore. Her sobs turned desperate, her mascara streaking down her face. Please don't do this. Please don't let them take everything from me. But the tide had already turned. The evidence was undeniable. The room, once my prison, had become her trial. Word spread quickly. Within days, extended family knew the truth. Neighbours who had once admired my parents' facade whispered about Olivia's debts, about the will, about the years of cruelty they had hidden. The perfect image they had clung to crumbled under the weight of reality. Olivia's inheritance evaporated, her creditors circling like vultures. My parents, once pillars of the community, avoided public gatherings, their shame too heavy to mask. They tried, of course, to pin the collapse on me. My father called me vindictive. My mother said I'd abandoned family values. But for once, no one believed them. Their words carried no weight. Their authority shattered. And Olivia, she fell hardest. Her voice lost its power. Her tears no longer summoned sympathy. The truth had stripped her bare, leaving only the emptiness she had always feared. The last time I saw her in that house, she was on her knees, clutching at my arm, her voice ragged. Claire, please don't leave me like this. I can't survive without you. I looked down at her, not with hatred, but with clarity. You never wanted me. You only wanted someone to blame. That ends now. I turned, my steps steady, my back to their ruins. The house that had once caged me fell silent behind me. But as I walked into the cool night air, a single thought lingered like a shadow. They weren't done with me yet. The fallout came quickly. Olivia's debts multiplied, creditors hounding her until even my parents could no longer shield her from the truth. Every time she tried to cast blame on me, her voice met silence. No one believed her anymore. What had once been her most powerful weapon, her ability to twist the story, had turned blunt, useless. She stumbled through gatherings, avoided phone calls, her jealousy consuming her until she barely resembled the sister who once screamed so confidently. I didn't have to lift a finger. She destroyed herself. Some relatives began to reach out cautiously, at first with guarded words. A cousin messaged me. I didn't see it before. I should have. I'm sorry. My Aunt Margaret came to visit, tears in her eyes as she told me she wished she'd spoken out sooner. For years they had watched Olivia and my parents twist me into the villain, and for years they'd believed it. Now, stripped bare by evidence, they were forced to confront their complicity. It didn't erase the past, but it loosened the weight on my chest. For the first time, I wasn't seen as the scapegoat. I was simply Claire. My parents withdrew into themselves, their once polished image tarnished beyond repair. They no longer hosted dinners, no longer paraded Olivia as the shining star of the family. The house that once felt like a prison became a mausoleum of their illusions. The family I had known, loud, performative, cruel, was gone, collapsed under the truth it had fought so hard to deny. I was free. But freedom came with silence, and silence was unfamiliar. In the early days, I wandered my apartment wondering what to do with it. No more frantic attempts to please, no more rehearsed defences for accusations. No more waiting for the next blow. The quiet was both terrifying and liberating. I began to rebuild. Slowly, deliberately, I reached out to friends who had drifted away while I drowned in family obligations. I joined a local writing group, sitting nervously in a circle of strangers until, week by week, their kindness eroded my fear. I discovered community in unexpected places. A neighbour who invited me to Sunday dinners, co-workers who became confidants, women at support meetings who knew the same kind of wounds. Piece by piece, I built a new kind of family, one chosen, not inherited, one where love wasn't conditional, where I wasn't a role to be filled, but a person to be seen. The scars of the past remained, but I began to see them differently. They weren't marks of shame, they were proof I had survived. And survival wasn't enough, I wanted transformation. I started a blog, my hands trembling as I typed the first words. For anyone who has ever been told they are too much, too selfish, too broken, this is for you. I shared my story in pieces, carefully at first, then with more courage as readers responded. Messages flooded in from strangers who had lived through their own versions of my nightmare. Some whispered their thanks, others poured out confessions they had never told anyone. The pain I had carried for so long became something else. Connection, healing, a bridge between me and others who thought they were alone. My suffering had not been meaningless. It had become fuel for change. One evening, as I closed my laptop after reading another message of gratitude, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and realised something startling. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of Olivia's rage, not of my parents' silence, not of their judgment. They could no longer touch me. The truth had freed me. I walked to the window, the city glowing beneath a soft spring rain. The air smelled of renewal, of beginnings. For so long, my life had been defined by the weight of their control, by the roles they forced upon me. Now I was writing my own story. Olivia remained trapped, clawing at the ruins of the life she thought she deserved. My parents lingered in shadows, clinging to pride that no one respected anymore. They were still chained to the toxicity that had once bound me. But I had stepped out of it. The greatest revenge was never their downfall. It was this, the peace blooming inside me, untouchable by their chaos. For the first time, I believed in my own future, not the one dictated by family expectation, not the one built on sacrifice and silence, but one I had chosen. And with each word I wrote, each connection I made, I carried forward a truth I wished someone had told me years ago. You are not what they say you are. You never were.